different kind of video, one I've been planning to do for months, but it still feels quite spur of the moment, and it's going to be my Studio Ghibli tier list ranking. Is it a ranking? Is it not? I don't know. I'm not entirely sure. Well, no, it's a tier list. We'll just call it a tier list. So this has been going around the internet for quite a while, probably years. In fact, I'm more than late to the party, but my laptop was making a noise and now it isn't making a noise. So I have here all of the films from Studio Ghibli from 1984 to 2020, or 2021. And I made this list just because I wanted all of the Japanese posters, because that's the kind of idiot I am. And it took, oh there you go, there's a laptop, there you hear that, it's kind of releasing all the hot air inside its insides. So I, me being me, wanted to make my own version of the list that included the most recent film in the Studio Ghibli catalogue, which is Earwig and the Witch, directed by Goro Miyazaki. So I wanted to do this because I think it would be fun, as opposed to doing a ranking of Studio Ghibli, like, worst to best, or in this case, really good to fucking incredible. So instead of doing a numbered ranking list, which I would still be open to doing in the future, I thought, now that I've seen all of them, this is the year that I finally watched the last few films. I made a video about that previously if you want to check that out, which is where I talk about Tales from Earthsea, Ocean Waves, and another one that I've already forgotten. But I watched all of them. I kind of oh, My Neighbors the Yamadas was the other one. So over the years, it's been a 7-year journey of watching all of these films properly. I saw my first Studio Ghibli film when I was a kid, and that was kind of a whole other story about my first experience with Porco Rosso, but I didn't really see all of it. And then in my early 20s, I saw Princess Mononoke, but it was really 2014 that I first started actively watching these films properly. And it's been a fun journey, but now I've seen all of them, which is kind of a sadness, but there's more to come, which for quite a while it seemed like there wasn't going to be any more Ghibli films, but we just had a new one, which I have mixed feelings on, and got the Blu-ray this month. Nice special edition. And this is a really nice set for a very interesting film in the Studio Ghibli collection. This is a really nice Blu-ray. I really like the way this thing is laid out, and it currently has my A Chinese Ghost Story 3 disc inside it. But it looks all nice and uniform when I have the correct discs inside the case. And maybe I'll do a video about this film at some point in the future, but not right now. So this is going to be a little bit different, because I'm not going to review the films or talk about them too much, but put them in a ranked list. So we have the A, B, C, and D tiers, and then we have the S tier. So the S tier is, I'm assuming, special, like more than A, like more than a 10 out of 10, I suppose, perhaps. Depends how you justify it, how you quantify it, how you want to label it. And I'm going to try and do this with a little bit of a critical mind, because usually when I rank films, when I talk about films, it's purely, well, not purely, but mostly from my own personal enjoyment perspective. So let's say a film that, if I was to look at it objectively, is like a good 4 out of 5 star film. Like, it's really well done, but doesn't really rise too far beyond that. But I personally loved it for some reason that's really specific to me. So for me, it is a 5-star film because I love everything about it. But if I was to look at it with a critical eye, maybe it'd be 4 out of 5, not 5. So with this tier list, I'm going to try and use a little bit of again, a critical eye when it comes to these films. Otherwise, everything would just be in the A tier or S tier, really. There's not too much, discerning that. But at the same time, I'm intrigued to see, because I haven't planned any of this, I'm intrigued to see if I will put anything in maybe the C or D tiers. So let's just get into it. I've organized them all by release date order. I am including Nasika of the Valley of the Wind because they list it on their website as the first film. It's kind of been you know, embalmed into the Studio Ghibli canon, I suppose, even though it was Laputa Castle in the Sky was the first official Ghibli film in 1986. And I am including the 2016 The Red Turtle by Michael Dudok because it was a Studio Ghibli co-production. Takahata was involved in that film. And they also include it on their official filmography on their website. So for me, I'm going to count it. Now, let's get into it. Let's just work our way through chronologically. At the beginning, Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, we start things off with an S tier movie. I'm sorry, I love this film, and I think it is kind of a masterpiece, and has an amazing central character, beautiful visuals, scintillating score. It helps that I read the manga, which is like this 1,000-page epic, and I love the manga so much. But the movie is such a great distillation of that story. Well, even the manga has so much more to tell beyond the scope of the movie, but it just captures the wonder and the respect for nature, which is a big theme in Miyazaki's films. This was directed by Hayao Miyazaki in 1984. I'm going to try not to rattle into these too much because I could really just talk and talk and talk about these films, and this could realistically be a 2 to 3 hour video if I really want to get into each film. Maybe even longer. Fuck, I mean, it's Ghibli, so that would be an S tier one for me. It's just, yeah, it's one of my absolute favorites. I love the score so much. It's just brilliant. The English dub is great as well. Yeah, it's just one of those. It just works. Laputa Castle in the Sky, 1984. This is gonna go in the A tier. And I'm going to check that my thing isn't getting cut off. It is getting cut off a little bit. My screen recording, so let me just tilt that down a bit there. How's that? Okay, we've got them back in view. Yeah, A tier for me, Castle in the Sky. I think it's one of the best adventure films ever made. It's just a pure thrill ride from start to finish. Just breathtaking visuals. Another great score from Joe Hisaishi. Another Hayao Miyazaki film, and it's so full of just, again, wonder. That's a word I'll come back to again and again with these films, but like in that opening sequence when Sheeta, falls off the blimp and just like falls into the dark clouds, and then that blinding light kind of cracks open, and it's like that's how you start a fucking movie. So, but anyway, Castle in the Sky is brilliant. I love it, but it doesn't quite reach the top S tier for me, but it's still great. My Neighbor Totoro, 1988, Hayao Miyazaki again. It's gonna go S tier. I wouldn't have said this the first time I watched it. Again, probably 2014, but it's a film that has grown on me and grown on me and grown on me. It's like a warm hug of a film. It's just unforgettable and brilliant in many ways. But yeah, it's just Totoro is a film that's just been over-explained. People talk about that one. It's one of their all-time favorites. I like that it took a while for me to really embrace it, and I think it was the fact that Connie really loved it. That's what pushed it over the edge for me, is that seeing her enjoy it and then watching it with her again and all that kind of stuff. But it's a perfect movie. My Neighbor Totoro, it's fantastic. Grave of the Fireflies. It's an S tier movie. It's not one I'd want to watch over and over again. I've seen it twice. I think I'd like to see it maybe a couple more times in my life, but it's a rough ride, and it is one of the greatest war movies ever made, because it shows you this really difficult part of war where excuse me, I've got allergies, by the way, so it's kind of soldiering through here for the sake of the video. Apologies for the nose scratching. But yeah, Grave of the Fireflies, it feels like essential viewing. It's one of those things that shows you a side of war that most war movies don't dig into, at least not in this kind of detail. And it's a testament to the original story. It's a testament to Isao Takahata, the director, for really putting the emphasis on realism in a really shocking story of these two young kids in World War II in Japan, who at the beginning of the movie are dead, you know. So it's this relentless, like, funeral march for 18, 19 minutes of these two young children that you know are going to die at the end of the story. How do you make that work, you know? How do you make any of the nice moments resonate, but somehow Takahata is able to do it, and then the obviously the more sad moments of the film very naturally flow out when you know their fate, and yet there's still a moment at the end where you feel there's some solace. It's a wonderful film and a horrifically devastating film, but it is one of the best films I think I've ever seen because it's such a powerful story. Anyway, so moving on, Kiki's Delivery Service, 1989, Hayao Miyazaki. It pains me to do this, but I'm going to put in the A tier. Now, my personal preference, it's one of my all-time favorite movies, period. So it would absolutely be an S tier. And I way prefer it to My Neighbor Totoro. I way prefer it to Grave of the Fireflies. But it's going to go in the A tier because it doesn't have that extra something. Well, it does. It does. But I'm trying to be really harsh and critical here. I'm trying to not, again, overflow this list with S tier movies. So Kiki, again, one of my all-time favorites. I love this film so much. This is the film that Akira Kurosawa said made him weep. And I love the film so much. It couldn't be anything less than an A tier movie at the very least. But yeah, I just see there's a part of Kiki that I think is really profound, but I think that comes from my own projection of it. I see things in her character that I feel like I've experienced. Because if any of you weren't aware, I was a witch when I was 13 years old, and I used to fly around Europe and deliver packages and stuff. No, but there's something about the way that she gets really demotivated and even depressed that I really related to when I was around that age. I don't think that was really intentional, and again, it's me projecting onto it, but that's where the extra level for me comes from. But looking at it a bit more objectively, it doesn't quite have the same wow factor as say the top three here. But yeah, Kiki is one of my Kiki's probably my second favorite Ghibli film. So that shows you how this list is changing a little bit here. Only Yesterday, 1991, I believe, from Isao Takahata. Damn, it's going in the A tier. Oh, this is going to be really difficult. um, it kind of has to. I think Only Yesterday is a masterpiece. Takahata, he knows how to make them. You know, the story of this woman going on her vacation from work to a rural countryside setting and farming, working during her vacation because she feels putting herself closer to nature is something that is very valuable to her as a person. And as she does, you know, this little quaint little trip to the countryside, not much happens, but she remembers her youth, and we cut between her adulthood and her childhood, and it's just a masterpiece, you know, from the visual distinctions of the two eras that you see throughout the film to the beautiful subtleties and the emotions and the things left unsaid. And it just speaks to what it was like when you were a kid. It speaks to what you were like when you were in your 20s and looking back. And it's about the power of nostalgia. There's just so many things going on. And Only Yesterday, it's so rich in themes. And I did a very lengthy discussion on the film with Daisuke Beppu, so go check that out if you haven't seen it before. It's up on my channel. Yep, for me that's going to be an A tier, an S tier movie, and perhaps the most painful of all. Porco Rosso is going in the A tier, or is it? It is. It is. Oh man. So, full disclosure for anyone who's maybe new to the channel, Porco Rosso is probably in my top 10 favorite films of all time. My favorite Ghibli film by far. And I do think it's great. I think it's far better than people give it credit for. But if I look at it from start to finish, I think that it doesn't have the same resonance and power. And you know, I'm looking now at Nasika and thinking, oh, is this out of place actually? Considering Kiki and Porco don't make the Est. And again, I haven't planned this. So this is kind of fun for me to see where I'd put them. But the Nausicaa thing, there's a real powerful message in that film, and messages perhaps about the way we treat each other, about the way humanity fights itself. So I think that it has bigger things to say. Porco Rosso is one of the best films ever made about nostalgia, I think, and has one of the best depictions of getting lost in a memory that I've ever seen in a film, animated or otherwise. But I love every single thing about it. It feels like a film that was made for me, but it would be just below the S tier, which is crazy. And I wouldn't have thought, looking at it, that I would have done that, but I have. Next up, we have Ocean Waves from 1993, I think. I'm not too sure on some of the dates here. Where would Ocean Waves go? This is tricky. I'm going to go B on this one. It's very underrated, and personal wise, it would probably be an A. I think I love Ocean Waves. It was quite a revelation for me because it was made for TV, and I think it was supposed to be more of an exercise for some of the other staff members at Studio Ghibli, but it kind of became something bigger, and it's like an hour long, and it's really great. There's some really good stuff in there. I really like the characters and the kind of, again, the things left unsaid and the subtleties of human interactions, especially like teenage human interactions where like you can tell there's like stuff bubbling under the surface there, and no one's really going to say anything, but you can kind of glean that from the facial expressions. Very impressive in that regard, and I think there's some really memorable moments in it, but it doesn't quite have the same fullness as some of the other films to get it to the A tier, I think. But yeah, Ocean Waves. Next up, Pon Poco, from 1994, directed by Isao Takahata. I don't know who directed Ocean Waves, actually. I don't know if it was like a joint collaborative effort from a group of directors, or I'm not entirely sure. So, Pon Poco, 1994. It might be a C. It might be a C. I didn't love this one. I need to give it another shot. So this is like a C tier with an asterisk that I need to see it again. I watched it during a really rough time where I was like physically was a bit sick and stuff, and I actually nodded off a tiny bit during the carnival sequence, but overall a very strange film. There's some really emotional beats that I found phenomenal, and Takahata is just, a master of these things, but it's very unfocused, I think, and just very strange, aside from the whole fact that we have walking, talking raccoons who have massive testicles that give them special powers. Even though I can deal with the magic balls, but I don't know, it just felt very lopsided at times. I'd need to give it another look, I think, but yeah, that's where I'd put Pon Poco. 1995, Whisper of the Heart jumps straight into the A tier, no questions asked. This is who was the guy who made it? Is it Yoshifumi Kondo? Nope, that's probably completely wrong. Oh, it was Yoshifumi Kondo. Wow, that felt like a name I just pulled out of my ass, but no, okay, that's the director. Love Whisper of the Heart, and I think I've only ever seen it once, but it really had that staying power with me, and it was really something I related to a lot as well. It's simply just a young girl who wants to write a book. That's the movie, and she's she has a bit of a romance with a young boy, but it's just really it's a film about kind of personal discovery, exploration of kind of your creativeness, but also literally there's like a really memorable sequence when she's following this cat through the suburbs and stuff, and then she ends up finding this little shop, and it's a really lovely little film, but how it approaches young people following their dreams, and specifically writing a book. She just wants to write this novel, and it's like this thing that consumes her. But it's just a really simple story, but I think beautifully told, and some really fun fantasy sequences. But even beyond those, I think just it's such a strong film, for such a simple story, which is often where Studio Ghibli really excels. You know, something like Only Yesterday or Whisper of the Heart, where it's, you know, there isn't really a big, well, there is kind of a high concept in Only Yesterday, but anyway, it's one of the stronger films of the catalog, I think. Whisper of the Heart just doesn't quite inch up to the S tier. Princess Mononoke, 1997, Hayao Miyazaki. It's an S tier, and I almost want to add like an M tier, like a Miyazaki tier, which just, you know, is undisputed. I think that Princess Mononoke is it's something else. You know, it really is something else. Yeah, I might just do that. You know, should we call an audible on this? Let's see if we can do this. I'm gonna go C. I'm gonna go B because I honestly can't think of a Studio Ghibli film that I would give that I'd put at the bottom. You know, there isn't really one that I think is. We're gonna go M tier, the Miyazaki tier. No offense to the great Isao Takahata, but yeah, I think that we're gonna put Mononoke in a tier all of its own because it is phenomenal, absolutely unbelievable storytelling, just an epic scale, scope, a brilliant story about how again humanity fights itself. It's Nausicaa in a sense, but done even better. And it feels like a Kurosawa film done in animated form. There's a real classic movie feeling to it. And then it has all this high fantasy stuff and these demons and forests and the demons and wolves and the kind of the mystical forest and all that kind of stuff. I got jumbled up my words there. I'll leave that in for free as I always do. But yeah, unbelievable score again, though. That's sweeping orchestral score from Joe Hisaishi. Miyazaki, perhaps at his finest, I think. I mean, yeah, judged by the fact that I put it in a whole tier by itself, but again, Mononoke is a film that's probably been over-explained and overhyped, but I mean, it's worth the hype. It really is worth the hype. It's phenomenal. You know, great characters. You know, serious storytelling. It's just massive. It's incredible. Mononoke, 1999. My Neighbors, the Yamadas. B. We're gonna go B on that one. I really like this film. It's very sweet. It's very simple. It's like a comic strip come to life. You know. I love how Takahata's films are also different. At least his Ghibli films. I haven't seen some of his other stuff pre-Ghibli, but you know, Grave of the Fireflies, devastating. You know, just horrible realism. Only Yesterday, an incredible look at, you know, at youth, I suppose, but also again that kind of realism aspect. But it's just so completely different to Grave of the Fireflies. Pon Poco couldn't be any more different than his other films. And then My Neighbors the Yamadas, he just completely flips the art style on its head, and it's all this empty space and just like white, almost impressionistic at times, and then again very simple like a comic strip. Really sweet, charming, funny, memorable. I really like the film, but it's not quite an A tier one, I guess. And I'm already feeling myself getting into that kind of B, A, S, C, and now M tier kind of thinking and levels in my brain. Next up, we have Spirited Away. I'll give you a minute to let that one sink in. Yep, it's an A tier movie for me. I love Spirited Away. Spirited Away is one of my least favorite Miyazaki films, and it's still a masterpiece, which shows you how incredible his filmography is. I mean, well, that's one thing I'll say. You know, Takahata's films, they feel like Takahata films in the sense that there's just there's an extra something there that isn't there in Miyazaki's films. But again, it's difficult to compare the two of them, especially considering they worked together so closely at times in their career, and then separately when they were doing the Studio Ghibli films. But you know, Miyazaki was looked up to Takahata quite a bit, but they're very different storytellers, very different sensibilities. And Miyazaki, you can tell it's a Miyazaki film. It has these certain details in them. But yeah, I don't know why I was going with that comparison, but I'm just saying that I feel like Takahata was more successful at making really different styles of film. Miyazaki has his wheelhouse, but it's a fucking great wheelhouse, you know. And Spirited Away is just a masterpiece of imagination. It's one of the most vividly imaginative films ever made. It's beautiful to look at, and watching it again this year was the most I've ever enjoyed it. I was always a little bit underwhelmed by it and thought that it wasn't quite worth the hype that it received and continues to, hold down, I think. But it's still a phenomenal film. For me, it just doesn't have that extra oomph to get to an S tier because, towards the end, the story feels a little bit just cobbled towards the finale. It doesn't quite stick the landing as much as some of his other films, I suppose. So it's just one of those things for me. 2002, The Cat Returns. I'm gonna go B. I was thinking about a C, but I far prefer it to Pon Poco. And I think The Cat Returns is Ghibli's funniest film. There's a lot of great cat humor stuff in that. It is, of course, a kind of quasi sequel or sidequel to Whisper of the Heart, where we follow the Baron character, or at least he appears in more fuller form in this fantasy film, whereas Whisper of the Heart was more grounded as a realistic drama, and the Baron was a fantasy character in dream sequences. Now he's in this kind of fantasy movie about this young girl who goes and kind of becomes married into the cat kingdom. And I can't remember which way around it is, but I watched it in English and Japanese, and one of them was a lot funnier than the other. But I forget which one it was now, so I can't quite. I think maybe the Japanese was funnier. I don't know, but the expressions on the cat's faces are like they really did their homework on some of the kind of mannerisms that cats have. I'm a cat lover, but the story itself, it doesn't. In fact, I may put that down to a C to be brutally honest. It's just not one I really go back to that much, and it's just it doesn't hold a lot of water story wise. But it's fairly pretty to look at. Not as much as some of the other Ghibli films. Pon Poco, I'll say is, if we're talking purely visuals, we'd probably put that up to an A tier because the visuals in Pon Poco are phenomenal. It's a beautiful film. Some really great stuff in that, really interesting stuff and thought-provoking stuff. In terms of the environmentalism, but looking at it as a whole. And the same with Cat Returns. If we're talking about Ghibli films based on humor, it'd probably be like S tier or like A. This is one of those things, but overall, I'm going to put it in the C. And the next one is 2004, Howl's Moving Castle, Hayao Miyazaki. Ooh. Yeah, it's going to be a B tier one for me. It's really close to being an A tier. And I do love the film. I really, it's so much fun. I love the characters. I love the setting. I love the castle itself. I love Sophia, such an amazing character. Oh, it might. Nah, we're gonna do it. Well, it's going up to the A tier. Yeah, it has to. I think it's just the more I'm thinking about it, it's so memorable. It's another one that doesn't quite stick the landing in terms of the ending, which is kind of like, oh, and then yeah, it's fine. It's but the beginning is so strong and the middle is so strong, and I just love the where that main character goes, Sophie. It's just such a one of my favorite Ghibli characters, I think, and it was a really perfect marriage of for Miyazaki the hand drawn stuff and then using computer animation in very subtle ways. Well, maybe not subtle, but integrated in ways that was really really well done, like the actual castle itself, which is such an amazing design. I recently watched a video of a guy who made the Howl's Moving Castle thing out of just like bits of like plastic and stuff, and then obviously a lot of detailing on the outside. But it was an incredible kind of miniature build. Check it out on YouTube. It's going to be one of the top hits. Just put in like Howl's Moving Castle model or something. Fascinating stuff. Like really really cool. It's just great design, but yeah, I don't know. Connie loves Howl's Moving Castle. That gives me a bit more love for it as well. But I do think that I don't know. It's tricky. I do think the character of Howl is quite underbaked and could have been developed a bit more. And yeah, you know what? Fuck it. It's going back down to a B for me. I do think I love it, For my love, it's an S tier probably, or maybe an A. It's probably an A tier. Yeah, let's be honest, A tier for me. But yeah, B tier objectively. I think it's the character of Howl that doesn't quite bring everything home for me. Now, Tales from Earthsea, 2006. Ooh, oh boy. Hmm. Ah, gonna go B, I think. I'm really tempted to put it as an A, but I think if I was gonna put Tales from Earthsea as an A, it would probably be more me trying to be contrarian. But to be honest, it's a B. But even that itself might be controversial. I love Tales from Earthsea. I've only seen it once, and I think maybe it's the fact that I wasn't expecting much and made me love it so much. But I really love this film. I just think the visuals are beautiful. I really like the adventure of the story. Love the characters. You know, I just really loved, yeah, just everything about it. It's a great fantasy film. Sue me. You know, I know that it doesn't really follow the books and all of this. I know it's a big bone of contention with not only the fans but the the original author herself, who felt like she was kind of sold a bill of goods by, yes, we'll have a Miyazaki make the film. Oh, it's Goro, by the way. Um, so this was Goro Miyazaki's first film. You know, personal enjoyment, it would be in the A tier for me. I loved Tales from Earthsea. 2008, Ponyo. Mm, it's an A. It's an A for sure. It's a perfect kids movie. It's such a great kids movie. Absolutely beautiful. One of the most beautiful Ghibli films. Going back for Miyazaki, he went back to full, 2D, traditionally hand drawn animation, and it shows. This film is just beautiful. The sequence of Ponyo running across the waves, oh my god, and the music, insane. Love this film so much. Miyazaki's version of the Little Mermaid, so to speak, and love the characters. And there's one reason that I love. Well, I love the Ponyo character, but now I have another reason to really love the Ponyo character. And I'll talk about it at some point, but I don't want to get bogged down in that whole story now. But there's an extra layer and level of love to that character. But beyond that, I just think that it is a great family movie, a great kids movie. And so there's a lot of strength to it that I think again maybe gets a little bit underrated at times. But yeah. Next we have 2010, I believe is when it came out. And this is around the time where like they're now releasing the films in like the UK and America, like the year after it came out in Japan. So some of the release dates I think are a little bit muddled here, but I think it's 2010. We have Arrietty, or The Secret World of Arrietty, as I believe it was called in the UK. Um, I'm gonna put it C. I really like it. For personal enjoyment, it's probably a B, not quite an A. Yeah, no, it's beautiful at times. There's some really gorgeous stuff in it. Visually, I love all of the sequences of Arrietty and like her father going out and scrounging things from the house. They're these tiny little, it's the borrowers basically. And it's just I just love all the stuff around scale and size and like the boy who's sick and he meets her and stuff. And it's a sweet little movie, but it never really rises beyond being a sweet little movie, I think. 2011 we have, is it From Up on Poppy Hill, I believe, another Goro Miyazaki film. I'm gonna go see on that one as well. I like it. I don't love it, and it's I was invested. I enjoyed it, but it's one of those ones where the story is very simple, but I wasn't really all that engaged with it, I suppose. I've only seen it once. I think I remember really liking it and stuff. The relationship between the boy and the girl is very complicated to say the least, and kind of maybe I'll see the film differently now that I know what's going on there, I suppose. But yeah, it's in a way it's one I don't see myself going back to that often, but in another way I want to watch it again really soon just to kind of reevaluate it and stuff. So I would maybe put an asterisk next to that one, as well as Pon Poco, as films that I think I need to see again to judge. Whereas The Cat Returns and Arrietty, I don't feel like I'm going to be kind of, I don't foresee revisiting both those films being revelatory experiences. I think I pretty much know where I sit on them. Whereas Pon Poco, from Up on Poppy Hill, I can see wiggle room there in both directions, maybe, of how my opinion might change. 2013, we have The Wind Rises from Hayao Miyazaki, his to date final film, and I believe like the fourth or fifth time he retired officially. Um, I'm gonna go A tier on this one. It's one that I always think of not negatively, but I think it's a bit of a boring one. The Wind Rises, but every time I see it, it makes me tear up at the end. I'm really invested in the story and the romance. It's an incredibly adult story. Like it's the most un-Miyazaki film he's ever made, I think, because it's just very straight laced. Obviously you can't resist a few fantasy dream sequences and stuff, but for the most part, it's this very complicated story about morality and creativity, I would say, as well, and passion, um, but how the realities of the real world can sometimes cloud and muddy the passion that you might have. You may love something, but it can be used for reasons that aren't as pure as where your initial passion came from. It's about a guy who loves planes and ends up designing fighter planes for World War Two. So yeah, but I remember watching it again a year or two ago and thinking, damn, that's a good film. That really is a great film, and I think that it was impressive to me that Miyazaki decided to do something a bit more out of his comfort zone for the most part and make his most serious film to date. And it felt like a great kind of mature story to go out on for him as a final film. But obviously now he's been working on his latest film, How Do We Live, or How Do I Live, I think it's called, which he's been working on for years and years now. So yeah, I'd love to talk more about that. But again, this video is already dragging on a bit. So we got 4 films left. We have um, The Tale of the Princess Kaguya. Um, M tier. A Takahata film goes in the Miyazaki tier. So, The Tale of the Princess Kaguya, which is Isao Takahata's final film, is another one of those ones I would say is one of the greatest movies ever made. Perhaps the greatest animated movie ever made. I think that The Tale of the Princess Kaguya is a timeless movie that you could look at it, and I've said this before, but you can look at it and say, hey, that was made in 2013, and people would be like, yeah, I accept that. You could say, hey, this was made in 2000, not 2000, you could say this, hey, this was made in 1930, and people would be like, wow, yeah, I believe that, because of the way that it's done. There's a timeless quality to the animation and the beautiful art style, which is so rough and, raw at times, and then finessed to match the mood of the characters and the story, and there's just visually it's a masterpiece. The story is classical and resonant. There's the scene that open. I just put on Netflix the I do watch my Blu-ray. If I'm gonna sit down and watch a Ghibli film, I get the Blu-rays, but Netflix is nice to put on just to have on in the background or whatever. But I just recently watched just the opening childhood sequence, where Kaguya she's just like growing up very quickly in the countryside. It's such a I love that whole sequence of the film. It's so achingly beautiful, just lovely. And then the way the story progresses, and it's just a masterpiece. It is just, I could just ramble on and on about it. So we'll leave that one there. And then we have the last 3. 2014, when Marnie was there. I forget the director, unfortunately. um mm, I'm gonna go B tier, I think. I love When Marnie Was There. For me, it's like an easy A. I'd have to see it again to maybe reconsider, but and I could see, personal preference wise, being an A. Watch it again, it might go to an S, it might go to a B, but again, more objectively, I would say a B because it's a bit slow at times and a tad heavy-handed maybe, but otherwise I love the relationship between these 2 girls, and where the story goes is kind of my shit. So I really loved When Marnie Was There. and it felt like a nice final film for Studio Ghibli, because at the time it was kind of, we're shutting down the studio and we're not making any more films. But yeah, I think B would be the one for me there to go for when Marnie was there. Then we got the Red Turtle, M tier, for sure. So Michael Dudok-de-Wit, I believe that's how you pronounce his name. He directed this film, The Red Turtle. There's no dialogue. It's a universal movie. You could show it to anyone, anywhere in the world, and they would understand it because the storytelling is so direct and clear, and speaks to, you know, it's a great kind of, I wouldn't say fable or fairy tale, but it's a very simple story that I think speaks to what life is like. This the circle of life that is shown in this very tender and quiet, and at times devastating, but mostly just wondrous story about this man who's stuck on an island, and then he meets someone, and it's just it is a film that I watched around the time that the Oscars were coming up, and Connie wasn't really interested in watching it with me, but she just was kept looking at the screen and just drawn into it, and then she couldn't stop watching, and then she just thought it was incredible, and we were both really moved by it, and the score is just haunting. It's a film that stays with you. I haven't seen it in like 5 years now. I should definitely give it another watch, but it's one of those top tier, like, undisputed future classics, classic now, whatever you want to call it. It's a phenomenal film, The Red Turtle. And I just love how it is. Like, it's a silent film, no dialogue, and yet the storytelling is so strong. And yeah, it makes me think of Zemo in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. It's a masterpiece, complete, comprehensive. That sums up The Red Turtle. And finally, we have Earwig and the Witch from 2020, by Goro Miyazaki. It's an easy M tier. So one of the best Ghibli films by far. So we have a Miyazaki film in the M tier. We have a Takahata film, a Dudok-de-Wit film, and a Goro Miyazaki film. No, of course, it's not in the M tier. What are you talking about? C. It's going to be C. Going by my personal enjoyment, I'd probably put it at B, which might be controversial, but Earwig and the Witch feels like a film that doesn't have a third act. If you've seen the film, you might know what I'm talking about, but I really liked it. You know, when they say they spent years and years making it, I just thought, how? I'm assuming that's on the planning of it and stuff, but even then, like, how did you have a film without a third act? It's all building towards this kind of mystery about this girl, this girl's mother, and where her mother went. And spoilers, maybe? Do you want spoilers in here? You're not bothered? I don't know. Either way, there's something that happens at the end of the film, and it's like, ooh, I can't wait to see where this goes over the next 20 to 30 minutes. And then it just cuts to the credits, and it's like, ah, okay. Well, that's that then. But I was really enjoying where it was going up until that point, and like the art style was different as for CGI, digitally animated Ghibli film. I love how it was made to, there's kind of the Aardman style of stop motion kind of infused into the way that everything looks. But what makes it look bad is the texturing. A lot of the models are not very, especially the character models. There's not a whole lot of depth to the faces or the hair or whatever. You look at the cat in the film, who I enjoyed as a character, but it's just this one flat tone. It just looks really quickly rendered together. There's a sequence where the cat gets wet, and it's like, oh, there's hair. There's some texture to that, but it's fleeting. And I found that the background objects and the food looked incredible. Some of those details and stuff, which you get that with other Ghibli films, where the background, the beautiful painted backgrounds look far more advanced and detailed than the actual moving parts. But regardless, I just think that it almost looked like an animated film from the 90s in a way, but then I don't know, it's difficult. But the actual animation was really good, and I think people maybe get kind of not confused. I don't want to like punch down or anything, but what's good animation is like the way things move. That's characters being animated, and I think that there's some really great movement in Earwig and the Witch. So really good animation. Just the well, I don't know. How would you really critique it and just look at the movement as animation? I suppose it is probably better to use animation as an umbrella term for everything that you're seeing on the screen. But I would say that the animation is really good. But some of the texturing on the digital models is quite subpar, you know. But through the animation, you get a lot of the character. And people have complained about the film that the character Earwig is like kind of an annoying little brat. I liked that about the character. It was refreshing to me that we got a main character who is just this little shit, you know. And that was just kind of fun. I found her funny because she was a little bit of a, you know, a little bit of a brat or whatever. But yeah, and I liked the setting and it was kind of fun, you know. But you know, ultimately it just it felt like an incomplete film in a sense, in that it felt like it was building to a third act that never came. So for me, it would be on the C tier. But enjoyment, I'd go up to a B. I definitely enjoyed it more than these four at the bottom, and probably, yeah. Well, I would put it below all the other ones in the B tier as well. But yeah. So okay, looking at it, I'm surprised that I'm not surprised that I made a new tier just for Mononoke, Kaguya, and the Red Turtle, but I wasn't sure where I'd really fall on that. But yeah, and if we were to get rid of the M tier, then obviously it would all be in the S tier. But looking at it now, I almost think like, well, Poco should be here and Kiki should be here, really, when you think about it. But I don't know. I think I'll stick with my original guns here on this. Objectively, because as much as I love Porco Rosso, as much as I love Kiki's Delivery Service, I think that Nausicaa, Totoro, Grave of the Fireflies, and Only Yesterday have something really special about them that elevates them above just being a great film. As a matter of fact, actually, I would put Grave of the Fireflies in the M tier as well, because it is one of the best animated films ever. So that is one last change I would make. And so, yeah. So Takahata has two films in the M tier, ironically enough. I probably should have just called it we'll call it the Takahata tier. If he has more than one film in it. So yeah, so that's where my Ghibli tier list has gone. And that's taken far longer than I anticipated, but hey, it's me. Leave me your thoughts down below on anything you want to talk about Ghibli related. I'd love to chat some Ghibli. I love these films. And it feels like I should have done more videos on them. You know, I guess I have done quite a few over the years, but it'd be nice if I had the time to do a full retrospective and kind of just review every film. But I've talked about a lot of them in a lot of depth that I feel like that might be a bit redundant, but I'd love to do it if I had the time. So anyway, thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Go see Earwig and the Witch. Buy the Blu-ray, check it out. Don't be put off by people who say that it's terrible, but it does have, you know, no third act. Just be warned. And I think that, you know, if I watch this again, I'd enjoy it more because I know that the non-ending is coming. I mean, there is an ending. They do wrap things up, but it felt like there was more to be explored there. And I don't know whether there was maybe a sequel intended. I think I've read that there wasn't any notion of doing a sequel, so I don't think that's even the case, but there we go. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.
He's alright by me. Apart from the fact he throws cans of Carlin into a tree. Yeah, he's really cool. Yeah, he's really cool. But he's not quite as cool as you, 'cause